Ah, there we go. I gotta remain in the light. I don't want to look like I'm in the dark. There's a street sweeper behind me, going around and around and around. I gotta make this quick. I'm not gonna sleep tonight. I'm not gonna sleep tonight. That is the critical consensus of this damn movie. Where do I have my ticket stub? This is why I don't go to horror movies. Because I do not like being scared. Oh man, I got Christine driving around the parking lot. This is it. Scary stories to tell in the dark. Oh, holy roller. How to describe this thing? If you like dark family movies, like Casper or Hocus Pocus, picture that, but with more edge to it. Like, if it really didn't hold itself back in certain spots. And it was set in the 80s. And it really tried to scare the hell out of you. Growing up, I didn't read the books because I was a little uncertain about reading scary things. I read a couple of things, like, In a Dark, Dark House, I think that's what it was called. Goosebumps, that didn't kick until I was like maybe 8 or 9. And then I saw like the Universal Classics and so forth, and went from there. And then later saw like all the horror stuff, like Halloween, Friday the 13th, The Thing, stuff like that. So I'm not looking at this movie for nostalgia's sake. I'm looking at this movie for what it is. And I'm going to say right now, if you want a fun, dark ride, like legit, fun, dark ride, this is for you. Picture the Haunted Mansion with more dismembered heads. It's not a bloody movie. Okay, there's a thing with the book being inked in blood, Necronomicon! But at best, it's fun. I definitely enjoyed it, despite certain scary things. From what I understand, they're doing a half anthology, half we're tying this together with a certain story, and that's fine. That's definitely fine. Jumanji did that, Goosebumps did that. But at least this one has the benefit of a doubt because it's going straight up for the scares. And I like, scary movies once in a while. I'm not a scary movie junkie, but if it piques my interest, something like Something Wicked This Way Comes, again, movies by John Carpenter. The atmosphere of this movie is so creepy that I just sort of sat there going, oh, something's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen. And that's the feeling I want from a movie like this. The atmosphere has to be so pitch-perfect creepy that you gotta have that feeling where you just know something bad's gonna happen every turn, and you don't know what's gonna go on. And that's really the kind of movie you're gonna get with this. It's built on the perfect amount of atmosphere and the perfect amount of scares, and that's what makes this one work. It's set in the 1960s. A bunch of kids go to a house for reasons, and they discover this book that apparently has all these stories written down, but apparently the stories, come to life and bad things happen. That's as far as I'm going to go with the plot of the movie, because it cleverly weaves in stuff from the scary storybooks so well that you're kind of on the edge. Like, if you know the books, you're going to find the Easter eggs. You know exactly what's going to happen. The thing with the pale woman, the scarecrow. When the scarecrow appeared, that was the big one. That for me was really the big one. I thought that was great. You know why this movie worked for me? It felt real. There was minimal CGI. The practical effects were great. It's what you expect from a movie that's not of high class, but at very, very best, it just does its job well. It's very, very serviceable. In terms of the scares, it works very, very perfectly without giving too much away. The first kill is so brutal that I could definitely see why there was so much back and forth between producer Guillermo del Toro, and the director who did Troll Hunters, which I've not seen, but I'm a little curious now about it. Because Guillermo del Toro was saying it's a horror family movie, but the director said no, it's a horror movie. Del Toro, family picture. The director, nope, scary movie, just flat out scary movie, and I can see why the two tones kind of clash together. Because on one hand, yeah, it has that Goonies, Gremlins kind of vibe to it. There's this fun vibe to it that has that throwback to all those classic family movies where they didn't hold back on being dark, but they had limits. Stuff like Return to Oz. Oh man, I'm blanking out for a moment. Casper, even though Casper was a little more goofy and it was like the 90s. This one here goes a little more full force. Like, I kept thinking to myself, this isn't too bad. I can see kids kind of seeing it. And then the first kill happened, and then it just went down from there. Oh my goodness, without saying too much, the stuff with the spiders. There is... Oh, it's not horrifying, but when you really know the context, I can't imagine anyone. Like, I cannot imagine anyone who could... If you're arachnophobic, you might want to rent this instead. Don't see this in theaters. You'll freak out. Trust me. With what they do with the spiders, it's horrible. It's if you know the story, you know what I'm talking about. There's a new creature there too. I think he's called the Jangly Man, and I'm not going to say too much about him, but that is the point where the movie's restrictions start to show, because one, it's a low-budgeted movie, and they really get creative what they can with the creatures and the sets. They really make this look like the 1960s. Like, okay, there's a scene in The Drive where they play public domain movies, because, hey, we can show Night of the Living Dead and The Terror with Jack Nicholson, because we don't get copyrights for it. But at least they work with the limits they have. At least they're going with what they have, and that's what I love about the movie. They're taking what they have and making something with it. Krampus, for example, that was a $20 million movie, low-budget film, but it looked like it was made for like 60 million bucks. This one, I'm curious to know how much it was made for, because they were so creative with what they had. Up until the final act, and you can kind of tell, especially with the restrictions of CGI and stuff, but they really tried. They really, really tried. Like, it's not god-awful CGI, but at the same time, you could definitely see why they scaled back on this, scaled back on that, because, oh, we gotta have these big set pieces. I'm trying to think if there's anything wrong with this movie. It's perfectly paced, the characters are decently developed, the kid acting is fine. At best, they did remind me of like those old 80s, 90s movies where it's the group of kids and they have like the different personalities and quirks, but at the same time there's no goody-goody person. They're all actual legit kids. They can be greedy, they can be mischievous. And that's hard to make likable, because you could go in any different direction. Trick or Treat, for example, there's a segment in there where the kids are just 100% jerks, and there's that one that's the goody-goody, and ends up surviving. Spoiler alert. This has been a pretty low summer for me. And I know there's stuff like Spider-Man Far From Home and things like that, but it didn't really pique my interest too much. This is like the one film of August that I just wanted to legitimately see. I mean, what else am I gonna watch? Dora and the Lost City of Gold. That's getting positive reviews. These are curious times we live in. Probably the only negative point I do have is that they released this a little too early, and I can see why they probably plopped it here, is because they wanted to avoid competition with It Chapter 2 and all the others coming out in October, Addams Family and so forth. If they released this during Halloween, it would have been perfect. It would have been just so perfect. Rarely do they have a feature film that comes out around that holiday, except the few that are bumped up like a couple of weeks or so. If this came out around October, it would have been so perfect to see. Especially on Halloween night. Like, if they keep this movie in theaters, that would be so perfect to do. I don't understand this whole let's bring it early motif. Or maybe it is a competition factor. Maybe they thought this didn't have any chance, so they just plopped it here. It's what Warner Brothers did with The Iron Giant, but that's a whole different scenario. That's a movie where they knew they had potential, they just didn't market it right. That's another thing I want to talk about, too. What is up with the marketing in this movie? It's clear that they put the scares first instead of the picture. Because I can clearly see snippets of this movie working well to, like, Don't Fear the Reaper, or what they play in the opening and ending credits, Season of the Witch. If they wanted to market this right, I would love to see like a trailer that shows the fun and the scary side. It's clear that they wanted to present more of the scares, because it looks like they were trying to sell a horror movie. And yeah, there's aspects of horror in here, but there's nothing too gory, except with a couple of exceptions here and there. There is some horrifying stuff, but I don't think it pushes itself too much. Like, the implications there, but it doesn't go too far where you actually see things. And those are the scares I think that matter the most, because in your head, you can picture these awful things. A good example is when they're researching... the main characters are researching this thing on, who wrote the book and stuff, and they come across this recording of a session during shock treatment. Oh boy, it is horrible what they do. It's just so absolutely horrifying, because you're hearing someone saying, "Tell the truth." Bzz, ah! That street sweeper's not going good. I probably should leave soon, otherwise this street sweeper man is gonna come after me. I'm trying to wrap this up as good as I could. So the implications there, and there is fun. The characters are fine. The only one I can think of that just didn't flow well was the bully character. I think there could be a little more charisma. He's a little flat, like, "Oh, you guys gonna go here or here." There could have been a little more of that. I do feel like in spots they could have expanded on a couple of things, but I think it's paced fine. Because later on, during the events of the movie, they do explain, oh, this happened, and oh, that happened. And that's really the other downfall of the movie. As creative as they can get with their limits, you feel like there are some limits to it, too. Like, there needs to be, like, a little more breathing room to understand this, understand that. But the big question is, where do you do it, and how do you do it? And you can definitely tell they were trying to juggle around and say, oh, we gotta have this scene here to set that up. One of the characters sets up their fear very late into the movie, and it would have made more sense if they plopped it maybe a little earlier in the picture. It's that kind of motif where they know they have limits, and as creative as they can get with it, there are limitations that you're going to think to yourself, well, it would have been better if they had like a little bit of an extra beat here, a little bit extra beat that. At best, it's still perfectly paced. It's still fun. I had a good time. The monster effects are very, very good. It's so refreshing. I'm so happy to say that. It's so refreshing to see an actual creature right in front of you. Oh my goodness, the scarecrow, the pale lady. I'm so happy they have people in suits. I was so happy there was something there. And yeah, they had to do like little CGI touch-ups with the facial things and everything. Go figure. This was just fun. Just absolute fun. If you're just looking for a horror movie that is just not holding back, but at the same time it knows when to hold back a little bit, this is for you. Would I recommend it for families? Maybe kids 8 and up. I wouldn't recommend it to anything below than that, because there is some stuff in here that's actually really terrifying. I can't imagine someone bringing their kids like around 4 or 5 and just seeing these things. They're gonna get nightmares, is what they're gonna get. Especially the one with the toe. Oh yeah, they do that story. And if you're a huge fan of the books, you're gonna have a good time. There's some nods and homages, like the Her song and things like that. There is stuff in here that they pay a little directorial to. Even the new monster they have feels like something creative with those twisted illustrations. Again, this guy is circling and circling and circling, so I probably should wrap it up. I had fun. this was a good movie. This was definitely a good movie. If you are a little too squeamish and want to play it safe, definitely rent it. But if you're really into these kinds of movies, definitely check it out in theaters. In terms of those who are a little cautious, it's a little harder than Hocus Pocus. Definitely a whole lot harder. We're not talking about Billy getting his... No, not Billy. The zombie. Oh, man, I like that movie so much. I keep blanking out. Yeah, Billy. That was his name. That's his name, Billy. It's not like when he gets like his head whacked off and it's comedic and stuff. No, when things get dismembered, it's horrifying. That's the best way to describe this. I say give it a watch if you're really into like those kinds of flicks, just straight up dark horror. But if you're thinking it's gonna be all blood and guts, you're not gonna get that. At best, there are some moments where it is a little creative with the setting it is, like addressing the racism and the thing with the Nixon era and stuff like that, which I'm surprised how they wove that in, because the 1960s was the down period for monster movies. It was all goofy and silly, at least until George A. Romero came along. Oh yeah, there's one other nitpick I have too, and it's the ending. Without saying too much, they set it up for a sequel, and I kind of wish they didn't. I think it ended just fine where it was. But it's like, I gotta do something. Uh-oh, low battery. Alright. I guess that's all I got to say about this one. Other than that, those are my words. If you're brave enough, step right up, give it a shot. Just make sure you don't watch this movie around in the dark. Oh man, it's near midnight and I gotta go home. This is why I don't see these kinds of movies at 9:20. Alright. Goodbye. Hope the Jingly Man doesn't come after me. Nah, I'll be fine. I'm gonna watch Shazam anyway. Later.